Welcome, my friends. In this video, I will be discussing section 3.7, which is titled By Group Summaries. I will be completing this section with the help of the TI-84 calculator. Here we have a table which represents the senator party affiliation and degree of conservatism based on the 1998 Senate in the United States. Group number 1 represents Democrats, and group number 2 represents Republicans. Let's use the TI-84 calculator to compare statistics for the two samples. To enter data into the TI-84 calculator, you can press the Stat key and then the very first option, which is Edit, by either pressing 1 or Enter. Here you will see the stat list, which has a number of different lists, L1, L2, L3, etc. The first thing you will want to do is clear out your first two lists. Now, I'm not going to clear out the first two lists because I already have the numbers in here, but to demonstrate how a list could be cleared, I'm going to clear list 3. But you should do this for lists 1 and 2. To clear a list, you should hover over top of the list by using the arrow key to arrow up to it, press the clear key, and then the down arrow. And that will clear all the numbers in the list. From there, you can go ahead and enter in all the numbers. To enter in the numbers, you'll just type in each number, press enter, and then type in the next number and press enter, etc. until you have typed in all of the different numbers. Now, I know there's a lot of numbers here, and I wanted to use the example from the textbook, so I apologize for the amount of numbers here, but I strongly encourage you to go ahead and type in all these numbers. Group 1 for Democrats should go into list 1, and group 2 for Republicans should go into list 2. You should end up having 55 different values in your list 2. You can see here it says L2 55 is 72, the last value. And for list 1, you should end up having 45 different values. So please go ahead and pause the video and type in all of those numbers. I strongly encourage you to do this so that you're able to follow along with the rest of the video. Okay, next we need to run what is called one-var stats on our data. So to do that, we can press the stat key again. And then you'll see we have these menus on the top. Press the right arrow once and we'll be on the calculate menu. Now we have to use the very first option for one-var stats. We can't use two-var stats, even though we have two different data sets. We have to use one-var stats since we don't have the same number of observations in each data set. So go to one-var stats. Now, depending on your calculator, you may or may not get this menu. If you do get this menu, make sure the list says list 1. For me, it says list 2. So I'm going to have to press second and then 1 to change this to list 1. If you don't get this menu, you'll just have you'll be back on the home screen and you can do the same thing. Basically just press second and 1 and it'll give you list 1, or actually it'll default to list 1 if you don't change anything. We can leave the frequency list as blank and then we can go ahead and calculate, and it's going to give us a whole bunch of different statistics based on this data set. So if your numbers are not the same as mine, then that most likely means you have typed in one of the numbers incorrectly. So you may want to recheck the numbers, but this is what you should be getting. So it's going to give us a number of different values. So I'm going to go through all of these numbers really quickly with you. The first number is x bar, which is of course the sample mean. That's the number you would get if you added up all of these together and divided by the sample size. They give us a couple other numbers which aren't going to be relevant to us for the most part. This is the sum of x if you added up all the values in the data set. This is the sum of x squared if you squared each value and added them all together. Sometimes that's useful for certain formulas. They give us Sx, which usually we just label as S. That's the sample standard deviation, which is the measure of variability. They give us the population standard deviation, which is sigma, which you may remember the difference between these two is the sigma divides by just n, whereas the S divides by n minus 1. They give us the sample size, which is n, of 45, and then if we scroll down, we get the 5-number summary, the smallest, the first quartile, the median, the third quartile, and the maximum. So lots of really good statistics that we can get just based on using our calculator. Let's do the same thing, but for the Republicans. So we can press stat again. We can go to calculate. We can do one-var stats one more time. And this time we want to do it based on Republicans. So we can do second and 2 to change that to 2. And then we can go down and calculate, and we will get the similar statistics, but now just for the Republicans. So the mean level of conservatism for them was 77.87, etc. down for all of these different numbers. So here I have summarized all those numbers in this table. And now I should just mention here that I'm using the population values to represent the mean and standard deviation because really we have the entire population. We have all the Democrats and Republicans in the entire population, which would be the 1998 Senate. So I know the textbook, I was looking at the textbook values for these, and I think they actually use the sample standard deviation, but I believe it's more appropriate here to use the population values, since this really is the entire population. So that's also why I used mu rather than x bar. But here are all the values summarized in this little table here. So now we can use this information to answer a number of different questions. So one question could be asked, which is, which party has a higher measure of center? Now, typically we use either the mean or the median to represent the level of center. So unsurprisingly, we have higher both mean and median for Republicans, right? Republicans typically tend to be more conservative. And if we look at the values, the mean for Republicans is 77.87 compared to 9.96 for Democrats, and 80 compared to 8 for the median. So no matter which one we go with, we're going to say that Republicans have a higher measure of center. What about variation? Well, usually we use the standard deviation to represent variation. So once again, the Republicans have a higher measure of variation here, 19.48 compared to only 9.99 for Democrats. Number 3 says, find the range and the IQR for each party. Remember, the range is just the maximum minus the minimum, and the IQR, or interquartile range, is Q3 minus Q1. So for Democrats, the range is going to be the maximum of 40 minus the minimum of 0, which is just 40. The distance between the smallest to the largest value for Democrats is just 40 units. For Republicans, the range is the maximum of 100 minus the minimum of 21, which ends up being 79. The distance between the smallest conservative value for Republicans to the largest is 79 units. For the IQR for Democrats, we can take 16 minus 4 and we get 12. So the range of the middle half of the data set is 12 units for Democrats, and for Republicans, the range of the middle half is going to be 24. We take 92 and subtract 68. Now we can also create boxplots as well as histograms using the TI-84. It's not as nice as something we would get using a programming language like R, but it's still something I would like to show you. So in order to do this, first you got to make sure that you have the numbers in your stat list, which I do. And then the next thing is to go to your y equals, and then you can go up here and you're going to want to enable both plots 1 and 2. So to do that, you just kind of scroll up to them and then you press enter, and that kind of toggles the plots to be on or off. And then from there, we can press second and then y equals, and we will kind of be in this plot menu. And I'm going to choose plot number 1. I believe you can also toggle that from here. So you can say plot 1 on or off from here. So we could also do it here. Okay, it's going to ask you which type of graph do you want, and you have all these different options here. I'm going to start with the boxplots, so that's this option here. It might look a little bit different for you depending on what kind of version of the calculator you have, but this is what it looks like for me. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this option, so you can kind of toggle between them by pressing enter when you're hovering over a different option. And then make sure this says list 1. If it doesn't say list 1, press second and then 1, and it will change to list 1. You can also change the mark if you want to. We don't really need to worry about that. And now I'm going to go over to plot 2. So I'm going to scroll up here and go to plot 2 and press enter. And I'm going to change the type here, if it's not already changed already, to the box and whisker plot. But I've already got the correct one. And then I want to make sure the X list is list 2. So I can press second and 2 to get the list. And then maybe you want to choose a different mark for this one. So I think the first one had this mark, and this one could maybe have the plus mark. And then I'm going to press the zoom key. And I'm going to do zoom option 9, which is zoom stat. And that's going to give me a picture of my 2 box and whisker plots. So it doesn't, very nicely show the units here, but we can kind of like scroll around to see where we are in terms of X. So the bottom one is the Republicans. And it looks like we have a few outliers over here, like the 19 or 20, maybe 25. And we can also see for the Democrats up here, we have some values. If you have one of the nicer TI-84 calculators that's rechargeable, then that's going to look something like this. I'm not sure if I have the numbers in here right now. I don't actually have the numbers in here. So yeah, I can actually show you, but it's a little bit nicer, and they would actually be in color if you did that. But I'm just going to go back to this one. So that's the box and whisker plot, but we can go back to our stat list, or to our stat plot, second y equals, and I can go ahead and change this to the histogram now. So I can do the histogram and go back up to plot 2. And do the histogram here as well. Now these are, it's not going to look super great when I do these at the same time, and I'm not sure if it will actually allow me even to do them at the same time on this calculator. We'll see what it's going to look like. So let's go to zoom 9 again. Yeah, the histograms are basically going to be overlapping each other, so it's not really that clear which is which. If you got the updated TI-84 with the colors, then you're going to be able to see them kind of stacked on top of each other, but I'm just going to take one of them off. I'm going to press Y equals, go to plot 1 and take that off. So now I'm just going to be seeing this would be what, the Republicans. So I'm going to do zoom 9, and here's the Republican histogram. Once again, you can kind of scroll to see where we are in terms of X's. And then I'm going to go back to Y equals, and I'm going to take that off. And I'm going to put the plot 1 on and zoom 9. And I'm going to get the histogram for Democrats, which is looking kind of skewed right. Okay, so I have better pictures of those here. These were made using technology. But I wanted to at least just kind of show you that the TI-84 can make kind of a simple version of some of these charts. It doesn't have a really nice axes, and it doesn't always have the nice colors unless you have the updated TI-84. But we still can make those on the TI-84. Okay, let's talk about some things that we can tell based on the two graphs that we have here. So maybe a question we could be asked is just to describe the shape of each party's distribution of conservatism. So the best way to determine the shape is to look at the histograms. So based on the histograms, we can see that the Democrats are skewed right. As we kind of move towards the right, the histogram is kind of tailing off, and Republicans are just the opposite. It is skewed left. So for Democrats, most of them are not very conservative. A few are a little bit more conservative, and Republicans are the opposite. Most of them are pretty conservative, but there are a few that are less conservative. We could also ask, are there any outliers for either party? And that would be a question better answered by the Boxplots. So yes, we do have a couple of Republican outliers. Looks like Jeffords and Shafi. I'm not sure who those people are. Apparently they were people in the Senate in 1998. And we have a few for Democrats as well, which are Lincoln, Edwards, and Bay. You can kind of see those as well kind of on the histogram. So these are kind of disconnected from the rest. These would be these three outliers there. And then it looks like these two are probably Jeffords and Shafi. All right, so here is one for you to try. The following two data sets represent the incomes for individuals in the suburban and rural areas of a city. So go ahead and run 1var stats on each data set and compare the center and variation of the two populations. So put all the suburban values into list 1, put all the rural values into list 2, and then run 1var stats, and you're going to want to get the mean, as well as the median, as well as the standard deviation, and that will help you to answer question number 1. Then go ahead and create a histogram and a box and whisker plot for each of these and determine if there are any outliers as well as the shape of each distribution. So go ahead and pause the video and give those a shot. All right, that's all I have to talk about in this video related to by group summaries, so I will see you in the next one.